Hi and happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to There's No Crying in Crochet. This is the podcast where we take your everyday crochet frustrations and we try to give you answers. Welcome. I'm Biz from Busy Crochet, and this is my cohort.
I am Debbie from MadameStitch.
We are so glad that you guys are with us today. We're going to go through just a little bit of business in the front end here. If you are on YouTube, click like and subscribe on YouTube for notifications. I'm at Busy Crochet. Deb is at MadameStitch Crochet. Make sure that you follow us because we're trying to add value to our YouTube channels by creating new tutorials. And if you're streaming on Facebook today, make sure that you give StreamYard the right to see your name, just so that we can see who you are and we can say hi. Other than that, tell me, what have you been up to this week, Deb?
You know, we had great weather through the weekend and they kept talking about this huge heat wave. And I know pretty much the entire country has been suffering from
Yeah.
amazingly hot temperatures, right? But we haven't. We got really lucky, and this weekend it was beautiful.
Oh, that's
But it
nice.
finally stretched up the East Coast, and here we are in the mid 90s. Yay. So I'm staying inside as much as possible. Well, I think my husband almost killed the dog at lunchtime because he decided to. We live on a bluff along the Lehigh
Mhm.
River, and there's a path that goes down to the river. It's really cool. But he took the dog down to the river, and instead of turning around, he walked along the river. And by that time, she hasn't moved from her spot on the hardwood floor since they got back. I hope she's going to be
I
okay.
I
But
bet.
I've been super busy with updating old blog posts, and
Nice.
I just re-released a baby blanket pattern today
Cool.
that originally was just a lovey size, and I
Um,
added 3 other sizes. Let me tell you, the math on the largest one nearly killed me, but I
oh,
did it.
no.
It's out there in the universe. It's wonderful. That went out today, and I'm working on a series. A lot of people don't know how to read crochet patterns, and
Yeah.
that's perfectly fine. Choices, whatever. But there
Mhm,
are people who want to know how to read patterns because they
mhm.
learned on videos and whatever. So I'm actually working on a series to teach people how to read crochet patterns so that they could do more complicated
Mhm.
um, projects. And so I'm hoping to launch that in the next week and a half.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
eventually there'll be an ebook and a course. So I'm just kind of knee deep in all of the sitting
Yeah.
at the computer, and it gets to be 4 o'clock and I go, yep, I'm done. I need to be off the computer. Bleh. So anyway, what have you been up to?
Oh, this week's been pretty chill. I've been taking it easy on my arms, just because they flared up again. I did actually go to see a doctor this week. I've been to the doctor, and so they want to do blood tests on me to see what kind of arthritis I have. Mm, so well, I don't have any answers for that yet. But other than that, I'm healthy as a horse. My blood pressure and everything is great. So yay, me. But other than that, I have gotten signed up for my courses because we know I'm going back to college this year.
Yay,
For
yay.
the graphic design degree, and I decided that I was going to go part-time this semester because with the baby coming with Stephanie and all that stuff, and she's moving in with us this weekend, and it's just a lot going on right now. So instead of, creating even more chaos going full time, I'm just taking 3 courses. And, of course, all of my degree specific courses I have to go to the campus.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm gonna be kaput. I'm not gonna There's gonna be no biz anywhere on the internet, because I have drawing at 8 o'clock in the morning. God bless.
Yeah.
8 o'clock in the morning. And then I've got photography at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's gonna be a nap in between there. So,
Well,
um
I was going to say either a nap or getting all the homework done so you don't have to bleed it over onto Tuesday,
yeah,
Thursday, and Friday, right?
yeah. That'll definitely. I'm a stickler for getting things done, so I don't really think that that's going to be a problem. But I had my third course is earth science. Like I haven't taken science since I was in high school. And I just it's like, why do they have these really weird electives and general education courses? Like, what am I gonna use earth science in graphic design? But, who am I to question the great knowledgeable people, right? So, other than that, yeah, it's just been really chilled out here, and I've been able to crochet a little bit, and that's been really helpful.
Good.
So, other than that, not much. But the weather here is always in the 90s and it's 100% humidity all of the time. So it's just been very sweaty.
I need you all to keep that in the South because
Yes.
it's just I will say it's not as humid here. It's funny, in Pennsylvania, when it gets the slightest bit humid, you guys would probably call it a stick dry day. Um, we're all going, "Oh my gosh,
I
it's
remember when it
just
was like
so
in Wisconsin.
humid." But well, I think Wisconsin is more humid than here. I don't know, but
It could be.
when
I
I was
remember when it
living
would hit 80 and it was just
yeah,
unbearable up there.
I grew up around Kansas City, Missouri, and our summers were brutal, and you just wouldn't imagine, but they were hot and humid and horrible. So, I think it's a Midwest thing too, but anyway, I digress.
It's all good. Weather is just such a common thing. Everybody can understand it because we all have our
Mhm,
own versions of it. Alrighty, so let's get on to this week's topic because this has been a
mhm.
much requested topic.
Yes.
This week is our crochet skills class, so we are going to be talking about da, 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 blocking in crochet. So we've had people ask, how to do it, what do I need to do, all of that stuff. So we thought that we would create a presentation so that we can kind of keep track of where we're at because there's a lot to it,
Yeah.
although it's not hard. So I'm going to pop that on right now. Da, da, da. Oh, and then of course, hang on just a second. I was at the end of it. And one of these years though,
Nobody needs to be at the end yet.
one of these years we're gonna actually have our poop together, and there we go. Okay,
Yay!
so blocking for crochet, um, all that we need to know. Hi, everybody. I am just saying hello because there have been a lot of comments that have come in, and so sorry that I haven't been able to respond to everyone. Okay, so this is really super tiny, and I apologize for these really little words. It's even harder on this end, I think, because our screen is even smaller than what you're seeing on YouTube and Facebook. So I hope I can read this. I'm just going to lift my glasses up. So the benefits of blocking, there's a lot of them actually. And I kind of categorize them into areas that we can talk about. Starting on the far left, blocking shapes and straightens. It creates uniformity and it creates a professional finish. Is there anything that you want to say about any of that?
No, I mean, I think blocking is one of those things that's so important, especially when you're working on pieces that need to be a certain size, like if you're doing a garment or squares that all need to be uniform.
Yes.
Blocking, which by the way, we didn't define blocking.
Yes.
Blocking is a technique to shape and size a finished crochet piece by manipulating its fibers. So
Mhm.
basically, when you finish crocheting your piece, a lot of times you'll notice that it's a little wonky. In other words,
Mm.
the stitches all kind of pull together or they curl or they do
Right.
funny things. And blocking and the methods that we're going to talk about allows you to smooth that out and give a finished look to the piece like you might find in a store when you buy
For sure.
a woven piece, right? So um, I love the shapes and straightens because especially if you're doing a garment, you'll have a schematic that will show you the measurements that you need to have on
Hmm.
all of the critical sides. and this will allow you to pin it out, block it, and get it to a place where it matches all the other pieces and you have the garment that you that fits you.
Absolutely. Neve said that blocking is magic. It is.
It is.
I used to hate blocking and I used to avoid blocking
Mhm.
like the plague, but I've fallen in love with it because it really is a magical process. But to just finish off with the benefits of blocking, it enhances stitch definition, it opens up lace patterns, it improves your drape, it provides neat edges, removes curling and wrinkles and creases, and it adjusts sizes. So, we're gonna give you some examples of like the different things like what we were talking about. Shapes and straightens. If you look on the left hand side, that blanket has got super wonky edges, different, depths at different spots. Some of it's curling up on the edge. And when it's on the blocking mats, it's been pulled straight. So all of your edges are completely neat on the right hand side. And so when you take those pins off, it will stay straight like that.
So the blocking process actually loosens the stitches a little bit and allows them to be stretched out. The blanket, this is our memories blanket, and even though all of the strips had all of the stitches had a certain number of stitches
Right.
width that they had to be. I'm not saying this very well, so sorry.
It's okay.
But
It's
all of
Friday.
we main yeah, right. We maintained a consistent this sounds very smart. We maintained a consistent stitch count through the entire blanket. But because of the way all of those stitch patterns behave, um, they don't necessarily match up with each other
Right,
until you block them.
right, exactly. Okay, and then stitch definition. So the sample that we have on the left is um what is the word? We're talking about blocking, an unblocked piece. And you can see, I like my brain just went woo. And all of the little squares that you see on the right are very squished and all on top of each other on the left. So when you block it, you get the opportunity to create, that's the look that I want is the little squares on the right hand side.
Mhm.
Oh, that was you. I'm like,
Sorry.
yeah, that's a really
And
good statement, but it is. You said I think it's particularly beneficial for open work stitch patterns. I completely agree with you because I think you were answering Neve. She said,
yes.
I love blocking. If you make something lacy, especially, it can turn something that looks like a scrubby
Mhm.
dishcloth into a stunning work of art. I completely agree. All right. And then removes curling. So if you'll notice on the left-hand side, the circles that we have there, all of the upper edges of those circles have a kind of a curl to them. And all the stitches are turning whichever way they want. But after it was blocked on the right-hand side, all of the circles lay completely flat. And then removing wrinkles on the left-hand side, this is before it was blocked. The cross stitch that I did for that name in the center caused the centerpiece to wrinkle up. And then when I put it on a blocking mat, of course, it straightens right out and it stays that way then. Okay, so drape. This is another picture of that same pattern that you were just looking at before. But this is that scrubby dishcloth that Neve was talking about on the left-hand side where it's just all crumpled together. And then once you have blocked it and you go to hang it up, the drape, the ends actually lay nice and straight. And the details that you put on the edge of your project
Mhm.
actually stand out and become an ornament.
Now, just for anybody who doesn't know what drape is the flow of your fabric.
Mhm.
So the stiffer it is, the less it drapes and flows.
Mhm.
And finer yarns or open work um, fabrics like you see here will drape in a much more flowing manner.
Mhm. So think of it as you made something with um Red Heart Super Saver, a sweater. versus, because a lot of people are like, well, I only crochet blankets and I only knit sweaters, because once upon a time, the garments were always so much
Mhm.
nicer when they were knit because the stitches were smaller and the yarn was
Right.
finer. Well, a lot has changed in the crochet world now. But as far as like garments are concerned, and just to finish up what we were talking about here, adjusting size and uniformity, I have this on 2 pages for 2 reasons. So on the left hand side, it is on the blocking mat, and it does help the stitches to become more prominent so that you can see them, in their own place. But the picture on the right shows that I'm sizing it
Mhm.
according. Now, I know you can't see it very well, but there's this orange tape that's running along both sides of that sweater, and that was used to hit specific measurements. And
Mm.
that's what I blocked those pieces to, for the purpose of, when I went to stitch it together, the one on the left-hand side, it gives me perfectly straight pieces so that when I match up my edges, they stitch together extremely neatly. And so when you look at my sweater, you can't see the seam along the side for the most part, because all of the stitches are lined up perfectly all the way around. All right, so we're getting to the most common ways to block. We're going to talk about each of them. So I'm just going to go through the list here, but we'll break each one of them down in just a minute. The most common ways to block are wet blocking, steam blocking, and spray blocking. And the less common ways to block are killing and dry blocking, and we will talk about each of them. All right, so let's start with wet blocking. The process on this is to soak the finished piece in lukewarm water until it's thoroughly wet. Gently squeeze out the excess water without wringing. Lay the piece flat on a blocking mat or a clean towel, pinning it to the desired shape and size. And it's best for your natural fibers like wool, cotton, and linen. So,
Mhm.
what do you wet block typically?
Well, I tend to go to steam blocking because it's easier, but when I do, a lot of times it might be a cotton baby blanket. I don't do a lot of garments, but when I do, it would be something in natural fibers, um, to take out the excess water after I've taken it out of the lukewarm water. I will roll it in a towel and then let the towel absorb the excess water before I lay the piece flat. But
Mhm.
I generally, this is not a method that I use very often because I do use a lot of acrylics and acrylic blends, and this one doesn't work so well for that kind of fiber.
Mhm. I do a lot of cotton shawls and things like that, so I tend to use this one quite a bit. Another thing that I want to suggest for you, if you're going to be looking at doing wet blocking, is getting a product called Uclan, or
Mhm.
some kind of leave-in laundry conditioner, like a soap conditioner. It's a leave-in soap. So what it does is it helps your natural fibers to soften while it's inside the lukewarm water. And because you don't have to rinse it out, it takes, it's less work, but you can find it in a bunch of different scents. So it will also scent your work if you want it to, or you can find it unscented. But it just is, it's a fiber softener so that it makes your product even softer when it's actually
Mhm.
dry. Um, so that is one thing that I would suggest you getting. There are several different kinds. Euclan just happens to be the brand that I use, and it's spelled Euclan. And I was going to have a picture on here of it, but I forgot to grab one. So um, that one is wet blocking. All right, so we're going to talk about steam blocking, and killing falls under steam blocking, but it's a little bit different. Um, just a regular steam block, you pin the pieces to the desired shape on your blocking mat using a steam iron or a steamer. Hover over the fabric without touching it, allowing the steam to relax the fibers. Once the piece is damp and warm, let it cool and dry completely. This is best for acrylic and other synthetic fibers that may not respond well to wet blocking. So let's talk about steam blocking because it's actually one of my favorite ways to block, and I
Mhm.
know that you use it a lot.
I do use it a lot. I have a Conair handheld steamer. Just plug it in, put some water in the receptacle, plug it in, let it heat up. Um, After I've pinned out my item, whatever it happens to be,
Mhm.
especially with acrylic, if you have a 100% acrylic fiber or um, some sort of cotton acrylic blend, which I use a lot,
Mhm.
you want to make sure that you don't leave the steamer stuck in one place for very long because you can
Yeah,
melt the acrylic.
yeah.
So I tend to I don't put my hand under the steamer. I'm not not
Please
advocating for
don't,
that.
please.
That would be bad. Um, but I do keep it over just long enough that when I move it away and I touch it, it's warm or hot, and then I figure out whether I can manipulate the stitches. Sometimes
Mhm,
it takes a couple of tries,
mhm,
especially with the acrylic, um, to get those stitches to loosen up and get the stitch definition and the shape that I want, but
mhm.
never leave it in one spot for very long. It's the same reason why you can't use acrylic for a hot pad because it will melt, right? So you have to just be really careful or you will be killing it. Get it? I got it. Yeah.
Squish. Um, but yeah, no, it's funny that you say acrylic for hot pads because that's almost all that I use. And yes, I've melted several, but we're pretty used to using them. So, you know, I guess I just look at it and I go, well, I'm either going to melt it or set it on fire. If it's, so anyway. Um,
We
but
digress.
yeah, the acrylic as far as I don't have one of those steamer kinds. I just use my regular iron with the steam setting. And you go through a lot of water. And I do a lot of my blankets. I will steam them just because I want them to be nice and neat before I put edges on, etc. And what I found is I will hold mine over and you can kind of see your stitches when that yarn relaxes. And it will kind
Mhm,
of, it's not really melting, but you can see it just softens. So just,
mhm,
remove the heat from it and then you can actually move the yarn around, say like you want it to be more square or whatever. You can actually manipulate the yarn so that it holds a specific shape. And that's the beauty of blocking is that we're looking for it to hold a specific shape when it's done. And have you ever found that your blocked items have come out of their blocking after you've washed it?
Not a lot. I would say the natural fibers tend to retain their shapes after blocking a little bit better than acrylic. Acrylic kind of wants to hold whatever shape it had before a little bit more. But I haven't noticed it changing much in size. It
Mhm.
really softens up the acrylic.
It
And
does.
I love doing it for square. I love making squares and then blocking them with steam block,
Mhm.
because those all have to be a uniform shape and size.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
they
especially
usually
if you're
retain
not
it.
a uniform shape and size creator. Like some people, they get done with a square and it's just perfect. And then there are the rest of us who make wonky squares. So
Absolutely.
all right, so let's talk about spray blocking. This one is pitting the dry piece to the desired shape on a blocking mat. Spray it evenly with water until it's damp but not soaked, and then allowing it to dry completely. It's going to be best for your delicate fibers and projects where you need more control over your amount of moisture. What fibers do you feel would that be? Because I can't think of any that I've ever been like, oh gosh, this can't get too wet.
I'm thinking things like maybe mohair or cashmere
Oh,
or things like that, or
this
the
stuff I
lighter
don't
weight
use.
yarns. I know, I don't either. I'm not the mohair kind of girl, but it might be better for those, and especially if you have a lighter weight yarn like fingering weight or even sport weight, but lace and fingering, I think it would work really well for. I actually see a lot of people doing reels on Instagram about blocking their granny squares this way. So we'll
Really?
talk about tools in a minute, but uh, you can get these on Etsy. Wood crafters will take a
Mhm.
block of wood, finish it, and they have holes at certain intervals for different size squares. And there
Mhm.
are metal pegs that go in those holes, and you thread your granny square onto whatever size. Say you have a 4-inch square, so those
Right.
pegs are at 4 inches apart along the
Uh-huh.
sides, and you just thread the corners into it, and you can stack your granny squares. So you spray the first one, you thread another one on, you spray another one, and you keep doing that until it's filled up, and you let that air dry. And that actually, I think, is a really good method for making sure that your squares are all the same size.
I still have not been able to figure out. I've got one of those boards and it was given to me. I cannot figure out how to do them because for whatever reason, my square, like I've got the corners, but then my square sides all like scoop in. And I know I'm doing something wrong. It's me.
They
Ah,
do. It might not be ideal, especially if you don't have pegs between the
in the
corners.
interim space, sure.
Right, right. So if you don't have those pegs between the corners, you can end up with a square that has edges that kind of do this,
Like
which
an
is not
hourglass. Yeah.
ideal. Yeah, right? That could be a
Ah,
new trend. I don't know.
I don't think so. So dry blocking is just exactly what it says. You simply pin the piece to the desired shape, you leave it as it is, and then you come back later and you pick it up and you hope it holds the shape. I mean, really,
Sorry.
that's kind of what it is.
That sounds
It's
like a lot of wish in there, Biz.
right. This is best for projects that only need minor adjustments and are made from fibers that don't change much when they're wet or steamed. I can't think of a fiber that doesn't change with steam, honestly.
Yeah, me neither. But dry blocking, I guess if you left it pinned in that shape for long enough, it would
It
relax
yes.
into it,
Yes,
right?
because have you ever left a project on a blocking board for so long that it I have and it was a blanket and I don't know why I didn't take it off of there, but it was on there for so long that it would have taken a nuclear bomb to get it out of the shape that it was in. It was
Well,
just
then you've just made a case, my friend, for dry blocking. But I
but it
think,
was like
right?
it was months. So don't,
Well, let's you don't want your blocking to take months, but I
no.
will say I suspect that it takes a longer period of time. Generally, wet blocking might take a couple, 3 days depending upon how
Mhm.
saturated your piece is. But spray and steam only takes about 24 hours. So if you're looking for
Yeah,
a quick turnaround, dry blocking is probably not what you wanna choose.
no. And as a rule for myself, obviously, if it's a wet blocking, I leave it there for days, probably 3 to 4 days, just because I want to
Mhm.
make sure it is absolutely dry all the way through. And even with my steam blocking, I have a tendency to leave it there for 2 days.
Do
But
you?
that's just my habit. I want to make sure, and I just keep touching it in places where I knew that maybe I applied a little bit more steam than I did in other spots. And I don't know. I think that when things feel cool, they feel wet, and that always throws me off.
Mm, right. No, I think longer is better if you've got the time.
Absolutely. All right. So tools. Let's talk about the tools that you're going to need to be a blocker. You're going to need mats or towels. Have you ever used towels?
I have not. I purchased a set of, I think they're 12-inch squares with notches in them so you can build the size of your blocking mat however big or small you need it to be. But they're foam. They're very
Yeah.
thick, not very flexible foam. They're pretty sturdy. And I have 12-inch blocks that I just notch together.
I purchased, I want to say, it was probably 6 or 7 years ago. I decided I needed to finally start blocking stuff, and I purchased those little kid mats with the numbers and the letters in the middle
Mhm.
of them. And
Yeah.
I think I got a set of them for like maybe 25 bucks. But and I still have them and I still use them and they've been great. But they're getting to the point where they're so old now that the numbers and the letters are starting to come out on their own, and I
Ooh.
need them for poking into. So so they're kind of falling apart on me, and I think I might need to reinvest in ones that um are just solid all the way through. But
Right.
if you have or cannot find anything else, or just don't want to spend a ton of money, because some of the ones that are like meant for locking can be on the spendy side. But if you just want to start beginning to block, the ones that have those letters and numbers, they work great. I mean, like I said, it's
Mhm.
been 7 or 8 years and they're just now beginning to fail me. So, and I probably am not going to invest in new ones for a little while yet because these are still good. And if you need to mark things on them or put tape on them or whatever, they handle it well.
I love that
Oh,
tape idea.
yeah, Neve's got
There you
she's the
go.
dollar store plain kids foam mats, and she uses a low tack masking tape on them to help with measurements.
That's a
Yeah,
great idea.
it just helps so much. I've never
Mhm.
used towels to block other than to squeeze the water out of them.
Right.
So I'm not sure how well that works, but I think for smaller items you could definitely do that.
Yeah.
All right. So also rust proof pins and blocking wires. What kind of pins do you use?
I love the T-pins. Those are my
Me
favorite.
too.
They have a little bit more heft to them. They don't bend, so they hold your piece in place.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I really love the T-pins,
Yeah,
and
me
I
too.
also use every once in a while when I have a larger piece, like a shawl or, a garment with longer sides, I will use the blocking wires because you can
Uh-huh.
just thread that along the edge,
Yeah.
then pin. You don't need quite as many pins. You can pin
Yes.
strategically along that wire,
Exactly.
but I do use those every now and then, but mostly the T-pins.
I do too. Those are the only two things I have is T-pins and the blocking wires. I mean,
Mhm.
they've got the fancy ones. I think knitting, oh, who is it? I can't remember what company it is. But I know there's some out that have this like handle to them, and there's just a block of little pins or needles that you can put in, and it
Oh,
holds.
yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Okay.
about? I can't remember what they're called.
Yep, I don't remember. I actually have a whole set of them. They're
Oh,
only
okay.
about this big, 2 maybe 2 inches wide. They
Okay.
have maybe 4 pins sticking out of them,
Okay.
and they give you a little bit more coverage than just a single pin,
Okay.
the 4 prongs. Yeah, I do have a set of those. Silly me,
Um,
and they're great. I love them.
but yes, as far as like using those blocking wires and the T-pins, I do the same thing. I will thread along and I do this with my blankets as well. So you can use those blocking wires on your blankets. Like if I've got long edges that I
Mhm.
need to do, I will weave those in and then I'll use my T-pins strategically to keep them from moving. And that actually saves so much because I still have the original set of T-pins that I started with too. Like I just never buy stuff unless I absolutely have to have it. Um, but I think I only have like 75 to 100 T-pins, and that doesn't go very far when you're talking about a whole blanket. So
No.
those blocking wires really help your supplies
Yeah,
go further.
right.
All right, measuring tapes and rulers or tape in general to create measurements on your blocking mats are it's
Uh
essential.
Neve has the name of it. We pop that up. They're knit blockers.
Yeah, Knit Pro, that's the name.
Yep. Yeah, I have a
Which
set of
side
the
of the
four
pond?
4 pins.
That's funny.
Okay.
Um, oh, and she was also making a T-pins. Best thing ever invented for blocking, though, is the blocking wire.
Mhm.
Utter game changers after pinning out a huge shawl trying to get straight edges with a million
Oh
T-pins.
my gosh.
That's such a nightmare.
No one
Sometimes
needs to store that many T-pins. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
right, and sometimes the blocking almost takes as long as it took you to make the whole thing. It's just
I know.
it depends on how big it is and
I
how
think
dedicated
that's
you
why
are.
it gets such a bad name. To me, blocking is like weaving in ends. I
Right,
have
yeah,
to weave in ends because I constantly work with squares. It's just a part of the job.
yep,
But everybody disses on the weaving in of ends, and they also diss on the blocking because all we want to do is crochet, right?
right.
But if you're really interested in having a piece that looks professionally made, that
Mhm.
looks like your best work ever, you have to block it to make it really pop.
You do, and it is one of those things where if you're a process person, like for me, I'm a process crocheter. I like the process of the
Mhm.
project. Some people they just want the item at the end, so they get through what they have to get through to get the item at the end. You know what I mean? But I am in it because I like the whole thing. So I like the whole thing all the way through the weaving of the ends and all the way through the blocking. I'm a weirdo, I know, and it's okay.
Bless you,
But
Biz.
but I am in it for the process. And so at the
Mhm.
end I get this really beautiful item,
Yeah.
but that is going to be one of those things that sets you apart as well.
Mhm.
If you're looking to be a creator that is selling a product, say on Etsy or whatever, and you want to set your product apart from somebody else's, you're going to go that one step further to create an experience for your buyer where it looks like they bought it from a store, and they're like, no, this is
Absolutely.
like they can say, no, this was custom made, like
It's
it,
custom
it
made.
means a lot to people.
Yes.
All right, back to tools. Spray bottle or steam iron or steamer. Those are things you're going to need as well, because if you're not going to soak it in lukewarm water, you're going to have some form of applying moisture to it.
And I'll add one tool to that, Biz. You were talking about Euclid. Just make sure that if you're doing wet blocking, you have um, a gentle, it's detergent, but
Yes.
not something that cleanses the fabric. It's really just there to help loosen up the fabric a little bit.
Right. That's that Euclid I was talking about.
Mhm.
Alrighty. So tips. We're gonna give you some tips, some things to think about. Use only rust proof pins and blocking wires. Not all pins and blocking wires are the same.
Exactly.
And so you're gonna on the package, you're gonna want it to say rust proof. All right, invest in interlocking foam mats for pinning your projects. Like I said, you don't have to spend a ton of money to do it.
Mhm.
And you can go to the dollar store and pick up the cheapies that are there, just so you've got something to that's going to be stable, a stable base for you to pin your items
Mhm.
to. And then you're going to want to make sure that you pin evenly to prevent uneven stretching. Because if your item is wet and you pin it unevenly around excuse me, that uneven piece when it dries is going to stick out.
Yeah.
All right. And then make sure that you check your fiber care before choosing your blocking method. You don't want to shrink your work or burn your work or possibly just destroy your work because it shouldn't be wet, that kind of thing. So just make sure you watch what you're doing. And then our this is our last big tip, and we learned this one from Michelle Ferguson last week. And when we were talking with her, she's with Two Brothers Blankets, and should I block a gauge swatch? And the simple answer on that is yes. And so we're going to discuss why. And I'm going to bring us back to dun, dun,
Oh my,
dun,
there
here
we
we
are.
are. Hi,
We're back.
we're back.
Well, as a tech editor, and Neve can attest to this as well, she's actually been on me a little bit about making sure that when I identify the size of the gauge, that I identify whether it's unblocked or blocked, because it really makes a
Ooh,
difference, right? So
yeah,
if your pattern says blocked, then you need to make sure that you block your gauge swatch, which should be generally the gauge swatch is measured 4 by 4, but your
yeah,
gauge swatch should be at least 2 inches beyond that. So you're not measuring the edges. And then when you block it, you've got a little extra real estate to check it.
yeah. And Michelle gave some really good reasons last week why we should wash it, because you want to know what that fiber is going to do, and you want to know what it's going to look like after it's been washed, because it,
Hmm.
it enables you to speak more knowledgeably towards the pattern itself. Like if you're a pattern writer, or how what for whatever reason you are creating your gauge swatch, it allows you to then say, when this is done, it's going to fit such and this and that, because I've made sure that, all of we all know that yarn comes with like coatings on them and things like that,
Yeah.
to the colors and the dyes and all of that stuff. Once you've had the chance to relax it and treat it how you're going to treat it on an everyday basis, it gives you a better idea of how your end product is going to look.
Well, I make a lot of baby blankets, and babies are not kind to anything they wear, use. They're dirty little humans, and that's as it should be, right? And so when you give a baby blanket and you want it to be used, you need to determine whether or not it can be washed and dried.
Yeah,
Um, Busy moms are not interested in hand washing the baby blanket and
no,
laying it flat to dry, just not
no.
really doing that. Um, so your gauge swatch, make one, throw it in the washing machine with your laundry, put it in a laundry bag. I always put handmade things in a laundry bag, a net laundry
Yeah.
bag, to make sure it doesn't get agitated to death. And then put, if you expect it to be put in the dryer, put it in the dryer, and just,
Mhm.
you're not going to lose a lot of yarn just by making a 6 by 6 swatch, and see
Yeah.
how it behaves in the dryer, so that when you give that baby blanket, you are confident they're going to be able to use it the way it's intended, and not, if you want it to be an heirloom, you make it clear when you give it that this is just for show. Drape it over the crib and let the baby look at it, don't touch it. That's not what we're really after, right? So the gauge swatch will help you determine how that's going to behave when you launder it over and over and over again, and be able to
Mhm.
tell the mom or the dad who's laundering this blanket how
Right.
they can take care of it.
For sure. Carolina's got a good question here. Is it better to block a swatch when they do not tell you to do that? What are your thoughts on that?
Hmm. I would love to hear what Neve has to say.
What
Um,
do you think,
I s
Neve?
Yeah, give us the 411, my dear. But my personal opinion would be that, yes, you still wanna see how it behaves.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest. I typically don't. I'd never heard of blocking my gauge swatch. I'm just gonna be completely honest. Until last week, it had never occurred to me.
Mhm.
So it's something that I have to add into my repertoire. But as far as I don't know. See, I think that most designers are basing their gauge swatch on an unblocked finished product as well.
Mhm.
Um, or sometimes they do have a blocked finished product, but they give you an unblocked um, gauge swatch. And I'm going to say that I'm probably guilty of doing that. And I typically will put in there and I'll be like, hey, this is going to need a hard block in order for you to reach these finished sizes. So I
Mhm.
don't know. I'm going to have to really change stuff. So Carolina,
Yeah,
I don't have a straight answer for you on that.
yeah, I actually tend to measure gauge 2 times. I measure it as I'm making it
Uh-huh.
so that I'm getting a sense of how my stitches are coming together. And then I measure it again when I'm finished and I've got the measurements that I want, the blocked measurements. So I guess
Okay.
I don't actually make a swatch except to see how the stitches are going to behave with each other
Uh-huh.
and to work out some stitch patterns. But I don't often wash that gauge swatch. I'll use it to kind of do some calculations to get me to where I think I need to go. And then I
Right.
adjust that when I get to the finished product. That may be the wrong direction to go. Maybe that's the backward way to go. But for me, it kind of gives me a more accurate reading of what those how those stitches behave in the measurements the finished measurements I
Mhm.
want.
And see, I pretty much provide gauge swatch basically because most of my patterns are blanket patterns and finished size usually is not an issue. But the
Mhm.
reason I give gauge is so that people can match their gauge to mine for supplies, so
Yes.
that they know how much of their supplies that they need to buy, if they can hit the same gauge as me with the same hook, etc.
Yeah,
Um,
it's super important when trying to substitute yarn. You want
yes,
something that has pretty much the same gauge if you can.
right. But I don't do much for garments. My first garment is going to be coming out in July. We're having a crochet along, so um I don't even know what to say about that one because I didn't do any I have a gauge swatch, but I didn't do anything with washing it. And now I'm like, did I do it wrong? Oh,
I
jeez.
suspect well, I know the design you're talking about, and it doesn't have shaping to it,
No, it
right?
doesn't. No.
Right, so I think that becomes a super duper big issue when you're talking about something that has to be fitted.
Yeah.
But with
Yeah.
blankets and even shawls and scarves, there's a little bit of wiggle room in there for,
Yeah.
the finished measurement and the gauge swatch.
I agree with you. I think that that is definitely more important with things that are going to be
Mhm.
specifically fitted to your body. Righty. I think we've covered everything that there is, unless anybody's got any super specific questions that we didn't cover. So Carolina, I hope that we gave you an answer that works for you, which is a big fat we don't know. Unfortunately.
Well, I do wanna give one more shout out to Michelle from Two Brothers Blankets because right
Yes.
now she's
Thank you
focusing
for
a
that.
lot on gauge. She has some wonderful tutorials and discussions on her YouTube channel,
Yes.
about how she does gauge, how she gets the correct size, the finished measurements, that sort of thing for women's and men's garments.
Uh-huh.
So if you have any questions about gauge swatches, she's your expert. She's the person to go talk to.
Yeah.
So check out her YouTube channel. It's Two Brothers Blankets.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good plug. That's a good plug. All right. So at this point, without any further ado, what are you watching this week, Dad?
I'm gonna watch a whole lot of my computer screen, to be quite honest with you. It's been one of those weeks where I get to the evening and I just randomly turn something on to entertain myself while I do a little crocheting to unwind. But I have spent so much time in front of the computer screen that I'm not really sure I remember what I watched this week. So I did watch Jeopardy. It's great. Not really true crime, not really a crime drama,
Yeah.
um, but it's very entertaining. And my dog howls at the final Jeopardy
Yes.
theme. It's
We can't watch it because of
hilarious.
that.
Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. Okay, painting you. All right, so I did watch Jeopardy this week, and here's how it goes. We've actually trained my daughter's rescue dog to be a barker when my daughter doesn't want her to bark. So when she's at her house, she doesn't bark.
Oh,
She now knows that 7:30, which is when 7:25, when the Final Jeopardy theme comes on, she actually starts barking when she hears the ding
oh, funny.
of there's a ding when they start to read the answer,
Okay.
and she starts barking. And she started moving up her barking to 7:10, 7 o'clock, 6:50, because she knows that what's coming is a treat. So she barks the entire Final Jeopardy theme. Daisy, our dog, howls the entire Jeopardy theme, and it's just the most comical thing
That's
you have ever seen
hilarious.
on the planet. Um, one of these days, I'm going to put it back up on my Instagram feed because it's hilarious. It's just, and Daisy's so cute because she just throws her little head up in the air and just howls until it's done, and then she turns around, looks at Dad, and goes, "Okay, where's my treat?"
That's so funny.
It's a
That
it's
is
a
so funny.
nightly ritual. So that's what I watched this week.
Oh,
What
that's
did you
fun.
watch?
I have been watching like those docu series
Mhm.
about different celebrities and stuff like that. So it's been kind of reality-ish, TV-ish. I watched the Army Hammer one, which is intense. And I watched the oh God, what is his name? Nick, the one from Backstreet Boys. Can't remember his last name. Carter. Nick Carter and his younger brother Aaron. Terrible stories, just horrible stories about these people. And I don't know why I'm so drawn to them
Yeah.
because I'm a junkie for, whatever. But they've been very interesting and very sad stories. And it makes you feel for the people. But other than that, I really haven't watched anything super. Tony's dad has been in the hospital quite a bit this week, so he's been gone. So we're not in our normal TV, routine, that kind of stuff. So yeah, eventually we'll get back to our, reality TV. But right now, this is what it is. So I haven't done any true crime or anything lately either.
I think I did see that BritBox, has a second season of Beyond Paradise, which
Ooh,
I have to check that out. One of my faves, and my husband actually liked it. So now
yes,
that
it's a
the
good show.
network TV is dead for the summer, I think I may go back to BritBox and watch a couple of those shows because I think he would enjoy it. But
Yeah.
other than that, computer screen, here we are.
Yes. Yep. And I'm going to be going back to it too. So,
Oh my
all righty. Well, um, Stephanie's moving in with us this weekend, so baby's due August 19th, and my first class in school starts August 19th. So I need that baby to come early or late, but I just can't miss my first day of school. It just
that was that was not good timing, but
no. Like, what do you
it'll
mean
work.
August 19th?
You've got to be kidding me.
Oh well. This too
Well,
shall pass.
you'll be sitting on pins and needles from August 1st on, won't you?
Yes, yes. And she's very much ready to have this baby because she's been having a lot of sciatic issues
Mm, mm,
in the
mm,
last couple of
mm.
weeks. It's just been really bad for her. And it's kind of funny how you watch the tummy and it grows, and then all of a sudden she's already starting to drop a little bit. And she's
Really?
got like 2 months left, according to the calendar. But her last appointment, she didn't see her regular doctor. She was with a nurse practitioner that works there, and they normally measure her just a couple of days off. And this last time they measured her, she's 30 weeks. They measured her at 34 weeks. She's like, that's a whole month. That's way too. And so they're like, well, we'll wait till the next one and see where she's at and all this stuff. And I'm like, that baby can't come a month early. This is too much. There's too much shifting right now. Too much going on. I need her a little early, not a month early.
Not a month. But if she came a month early, you'd have all that time to get settled before classes start. I mean, there are benefits.
There are benefits. You're absolutely right. So,
Looking at the
keep us in your
positive.
prayers, people, because we're gonna need them. So, alrighty. Well, does anybody have any questions, anything like that? If not, we're going to bid everybody adieu because it is Friday and there is just too much weekend to be stuck here, right?
Well, as I always say, hashtag weekend crochet. I mean,
Yes, yes.
I've already
There's
got
things
my
to be working on.
projects lined up. Yeah, hashtag I'm taking a road trip and I will be crocheting. So
That's
4
nice.
hours of uninterrupted, blissful crochet. Already got it planned. It's great.
That is wonderful. That's exciting. Oh, Beck says it's super hot there, super hot here, babe. Us too. We're all
Super hot
melting.
here. We're
So
we're blocking ourselves. We're steam blocking ourselves.
we,
I wonder if I can steam
why do
block myself to a smaller size. Would
I
that
was gonna
work?
say, how come
Is
I
that
never go down? Like that's not working. I'm only
why does it always
expanding.
grow? And on that note, oh
All
my
right,
goodness.
everybody. You have a great weekend.
Oh, see you later.
Bye.